Welcome to the Supply Chain Dialogues. My name is Daniel Helmig. Have you ever wondered what happens to the precious metals in your diesel vehicle's catalytic converter when it reaches the end of its life? Today's episode might surprise you. I'm actually excited to introduce Don Weatherbee, the CEO of Regenx Tech, who's cracked a code that traditional smelters couldn't touch, sustainably recycling precious metals from diesel catalytic converters. What makes this story fascinating isn't just the innovative technology, it's the unexpected climate impact. While most smelters won't go near diesel converters, Don's team has developed a groundbreaking process that not only recovers valuable metals like palladium and platinum, but does it with just a fraction of the energy traditional methods use. This dramatically reduces the carbon footprint across the entire supply chain. I'll admit, when this interview was first suggested, I wasn't sure how it would align with our focus on greenhouse gas reduction. But after speaking with Don, I realized this is exactly the kind of innovation we need to spotlight. Whether you're a manufacturer like John Deere, an automotive OEM, or even a consumer who cares about sustainability, this conversation will change how you think about the circular economy of precious metals. So let's dive into the future of sustainable recycling with Don Weatherbee.
So, Don, thank you very much for taking the time today. And I'm looking forward to hear what you can tell us. But before we get started, tell me a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. I have an accounting background. I finished school with wanting to be in business and thought accounting was one of the best ways to merge my love of numbers with the ability to affect a business. So that's where I moved into. Long history of mining experience and two boys, both of them are in university, studying some complex things, chemical materials and entomology. So
that's a combination right there. Okay, so you went from mining into precious metals mining. It's quite fascinating.
yes, so what it's called in a lot of different places is urban mining.
We normally do the 10 questions. Would you begin by sharing an overview of Regenx's history, where you are located, staff size, and as well the mission in the recycling industry you have?
Regenx has a long history, and it was a junior exploration company. So one of these companies that finds properties, digs holes in the ground, trying to find new resources to bring them on to place. But when I started back in 2015, we were looking at a different way of moving forward. The business model of exploration just wasn't what we wanted it to be. And so it had an opportunity to move into a more of a material processing technology type space. And we were looking at really reprocessing old tailings to recover extra gold in them. And whenever you get into a new area, people start to notice you. And what we found was we were starting to get requests of other materials. First, it was an e-waste. So could our technology work in e-waste? And we went down that path, but e-waste has a lot of different challenges in that. And that's not exactly the best use of our technology. When we're approached by a large recycler in the States, Davis Recycling, and said he had an opportunity in diesel catalytic converters. Could our process work for that? So back in 2020, we started the lab work for trying to understand how that could work. And we moved from lab scale to pilot plant. And when we moved to pilot plant, we relocated our main operations down to Tennessee. So we wanted to be closer to the feedstock. And Tennessee itself is really ideally located to capture the whole eastern seaboard of the US. It's on major routes. It's in the middle there. It's great for logistics. I mean, it's so important in logistics that, as an example, FedEx, its first large hub is in Tennessee.
Yeah, I remember the story that for a couple of years, during a certain time of night, it was the busiest airport in the United States, right? Because everything went in and out.
So that's how we got to where we are.
You were talking as well already about how you can utilize the process, which brings us really then into the second question, which is what distinguishes your proprietary technology from the conventional catalytic converter recycling methods?
So the conventional method is a smelter. one of the large furnaces where the catalytic converter material is just melted down and separated on that base. So high energy intensive. Where the niche that we looked at was there's two major types of catalytic converters, a diesel and a gasoline. And the gasoline, the honeycomb structure is mainly based on ceramic type material. Diesels, because diesel engines operate at a higher temperature, their honeycomb structure is a silicon carbide. Silicon carbide, the smelters don't want to process. It causes operational issues for them because of the higher temperature needed to melt them. So that opens up that opportunity for us to use an alternative method. And we are a hydrometallurgical technology. We're leaching out the precious metals from the material. And so our process takes a ground up powder, that is the honeycomb, that's coated with the precious metals, leaches is out. We separate out the solids from the liquid, which is now a pregnant solution that contains the precious metals. We then do another chemical reaction to drop the precious metals out of solution into a solid form, which gives us what we call a dirty concentrate. And that dirty concentrate is given to an upgrader who creates a 99% pure metal that can be sold in the commodity market.
That's brilliant. Already when you mentioned the difference to smeltering, it's already clear, but let's make it clear for everyone. So how does your processing approach deliver the environmental advantages that actually exist compared to the traditional smelting operations that you have?
So compared to the smelting creates 1,500 kilograms of CO2 off-gassing whenever you process a ton of material. Our emissions are negligible. We're next to nothing onto our emissions. And all of our pieces become inert. No wastewater, all that type of stuff is all dealt with, that we are emissions free when it comes to our processing.
Oh, that's brilliant. And you do that in one location right now in Tennessee, or do you have other locations as well?
We have just set up our first. We decided when we were building it to build in modules. And so we built module 1, which then we can scale up to a larger set as we do. But because it's a first of its kind, we didn't want to go too big to begin with, because there's always lessons that you need to learn as you scale up.
Pilot. Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. It's a sweet spot solution for the subcategories in scope 3. So therefore, anyone who is basically working in scope 3 and trying to figure out how should basically, using your word, leach on your solution and directly come to you on this. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next question. Your company reports achieving approximately 90% metal recovery rates from catalytic converters. How does it benchmark compared to the current industry standards?
We're actually getting recovery results higher than the 90% now. That was our initial baseline. We are lower than smelting. We will fully admit that. When you're melting something down, you get a lot better recoveries. But we are up in that high enough level that makes it commercially viable for us to do at that baseline. And realistically, there isn't any other way of doing it.
That's the point, right? I mean, you mentioned beforehand that the smelters do not touch the diesel converters. So therefore, it's basically you or what else? What is there? Is there anything?
There are some other competitors who are at the laboratory scale, but as we're a good example of, it's a lot harder to move from a lab to a full scale. I mean, we start with solid powders, we turn it into slurries, then we have liquids. So you're moving all different types and scopes of material between your processes. So one solution doesn't work. And so it always makes it a lot more complex than it would seem.
Now, you seem to be well positioned from what you're telling me, and as well what I researched before, to really help reduce scope 3 emissions for OEMs. Now, let's talk a little bit in terms of how you envision creating this circular system that enhances the sustainability metrics and reporting for your potential customers.
So there's a couple different streams that we've got in this circular economy. The easiest one to envision is OEM cores. If you're in the automotive industry, most of the times when you've got a part, if you take the old part and give it back, you get a core charge. So a lot of the OEMs are already set up to recover major parts of all of their piece. And so as part of their chain, they recover those catalytic converters and then ship them to us. and we process them, and we then can return to them or their manufacturers the precious metals they need to create catalytic converters again. The other part is we also partner with smelters because, like we said, that they don't want these ones, but they're getting them from their customer. So what we give them is a diversion chain, is something that they can say, okay, we're collecting all this, let's divert it over here, and then we get back the precious metal that we wanted to begin with. So you're looking at ways of maximizing the recoveries of the materials that are being processed in the circular economy.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And it helps you as well because you do not have too many interfaces. You have the OEMs and then the smelters. Great. Now, I was a chief procurement and operations head for a long time as well in the automotive industry. If I would sit now in the seat of a CPO of one of these companies, what's your strategy to engage with major automotive manufacturers like Ford or suppliers like Continental, Tenneco, or Faurecia who are producing these catalytic converters? Or are you targeting different customer segments?
Well, it's a little bit of both. Because we're in the diesel, you're looking at your Peterbilts, your Caterpillars, your Volvos, those structures of what we're looking at. And what we are saying is the precious metals are a scarce resource. And as there is growth in the marketplace, there's an undersupply of platinum group metals. Over the last 8 years, the supply imbalance averaged about 259,000 ounces that wasn't in the marketplace. So if you continue to want to have these products, you have to find new innovative ways to garner the precious metals that are different than your normal distribution chains. And so it's like any scarce resource. If you connect with people who can help you find more, then it allows you to have a little more control on your pricing, all those types of baselines that are important to provide a resource to your organization.
That's true. You have convinced me. So you're scaling up, you're sitting in Tennessee now. When you want to scale up further, could you outline your expansion strategy for North America and or global markets? And a couple of questions that normally come with that. What is required to execute the plan? In addition, would you consider, for example, licensing agreement to accelerate growth in regions like Asia and Europe? Because at the end of the day, the planet actually needs your solution, it seems.
Yeah. What our plan is first growth in our current one. Like we said, module 1, we'd like to expand to at least 4 modules in to grow the current location. Then we'd look at ourselves as potential West Coast, because we're East Coast, West Coast, so a North American distribution. But at that same time, we'd look international. And you hit it correctly. When we're going to go international, it would be through licensing partnerships, because we don't have the expertise to set up in areas where regulations and all that could be different. You need local understanding and resources to be able to execute. Some of the worst decisions are somebody jumping from one area, not knowing anything about the new area, and just trying to set up shop using the old rules that you learned in North America, which aren't going to work. Some of the natural fits are just we'd probably license partner with a couple of the smelting refining type industry. So as a tag along to their business where they don't have to worry about efficiency. They just process this in the side facility.
Absolutely. Yeah, makes sense. That's a smart solution because many companies that believe that they have to do brick and mortar basically just waste decades before they actually can expand, because they do not get that it's the idea that counts, and you can make money already with the idea or with the IP that you have, and not necessarily by producing it. That's a smart way of looking at it, Don. I'm just asking, probably it's not the case, but I had this question in there. Has your company explored opportunities in the carbon credit market, and how might that affect the integration into your business model at all?
So we plan to head down the carbon credit market. The issue with carbon credits is that you have to be operational to have something that you can prove, and you have to be showing the actual savings that you're doing at that point. So we're in too early of a stage to be able to access the carbon market yet, but we do believe it's a piece that we are going to utilize.
Let me ask you one additional question that links to this as well in terms of scaling up. Are you interested in partners to work with you either from the financing side or with regard to operational expertise?
We are always looking on how we can maximize the value. And most of the time, it's through partnerships, relationships. We're not going to be able to do everything ourselves. We are going to need partners to move this forward. And if we get partners, we can move things forward faster. So where we're sitting right now is that we're in the prove it stage, is that we know it works. We now are setting up this operation that we've got a showpiece that we can attract other people in, because everybody makes these grand claims. Half of it's not believed, half of it's not true. So we're in that stage of, we're going to prove it. And once we can prove it, then it opens up a whole other different amount of opportunities.
Okay, that brings us to the last question, Don. And then I get already out of your hair. So if you look into the future, where do you want to be, let's say, in 10 years from now? And together with that, then as well, any final words for potential customers or partners that are listening to the podcast?
Sure. So 10 years from now, we want to be a global player as a secondary refiner and a place that you can get platinum and palladium from that isn't mining. And what we see is that the mining of PGMs isn't going to expand, but the demand for them is going to. So there needs to be alternative sources. And we believe we can be one of those alternative sources to provide the needed platinum and palladium that the world's going to need. And as a final thought is that we're right on the cusp. We're ready, and we're just about there to being a full-scale operating profitable company, but are always looking for investment. We're a publicly traded company, so we're always looking for people to buy our shares. So we're traded in Canada as RGX, in the US as RGXTF. So we always encourage people to help us by investing, and through partnerships. That's what we're pursuing right now.
Thank you very much, Donna. It's fantastic what you're doing there. And I wish you all the best, and your team good luck. Yeah.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Supply Chain Dialogues. If you did, please subscribe to Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or any other central podcast platform, and help us spread the word by telling a friend, colleague, or maybe someone in charge of getting your company or your area compliant with legislation, like your CEO or any board member or senior manager with influence. With that, stay safe, be bold, and see you in 2 weeks. These are the Supply Chain Dialogues, produced and copyrighted by Helmig Advisory in 2024.